So with that, I'm going to turn over the reins to Dr. Marc Lippman. He's the Kathleen and Stanley Glaser Professor at the Miller School of Medicine at the University of Miami, and he is also our longstanding scientific advisor for Expedition Inspiration and the Laura Evans Symposium. Marc?
Thank you, Julie. It's very nice to see all of you again. I guess I'm noticing this is the 16th time I've been here, which is almost as many as we've had, and this one is going to be a bit different and a bit surprising. Before I ask each of my colleagues to introduce themselves, I want to explain to you why, though each of the symposia we've had has been quite noteworthy, this one is, as they say in Monty Python, something completely different. In some sense, for 35 years, I have been lying to my patients. And I will tell you exactly how I have lied. A woman will come into my office and say, whose breast cancer has unfortunately recurred, and she'll say to me, I know why my breast cancer has recurred. And I'll say, really? And she says, the fact of the matter is that my worthless husband has run off with the secretary, my son is doing drugs, and I've lost my job, and I feel terrible, and I'm certain that this has done something to my immune system and brought about the recurrence of my breast cancer. And for 30-plus years, I have said, nonsense. Well, I mean, I think it makes some sense that I'd say nonsense. You don't want them to feel terrible or responsible, and I still don't want that to be the case. But the purpose of this symposium is not the usual way we have spent as much time as we have spent looking at breast cancer, which is to understand why a breast cancer cell has gone bad, what has changed in it, what has mutated in it, and therefore needs, if we understood that, to be put back in the box, to either be reformed or killed, and then the cancer would go away. Rather, this symposium has largely been dedicated and will be dedicated to understanding what we, the host, have to do with the progression of our cancer. And so you will hear, as each of my colleagues introduces themselves, as they describe a tiny bit about what they do, perhaps you'll notice that theme that underlies a lot of this work. And I think it opens up a rather exciting new area for breast cancer. After we do that, I'm going to have Angie introduce the two awardees that you, with your generosity, have supported, and then we will have three people give very brief talks about work on the theme that I've just discussed with you for a moment, and then we will take your questions. Okay, so that's our plan, and let's start at that far end. The gorgeous blonde over there, please.
I'm Annette Bishop-Rick. I'm a cardiologist at the University of Miami, and my contribution to the stress field is that I think everybody accepts that cardiovascular disease has a large stress component. And it's exciting to find out that many of the same things that cause cardiovascular disease can actually lead also to breast cancer.
At least you think I was being a bit sexist with that comment, knowing that it's a day before Valentine's Day. Nanette is my wife.
I'm Joyce Slingerland. I direct the breast program at the University of Miami, and I'm both a medical oncologist and do research on understanding why breast cancer develops and progresses. You may not know this, but obesity and increased BMI, body mass index, increase the risk of postmenopausal breast cancer and worsen outcome for both pre- and postmenopausal breast cancer. And we're trying to understand in the lab what it is that the interaction, in what way does the obese adipose environment promote tumor development and worsen its progression. And that's an ongoing story and has potential to really significantly impact breast cancer in the future.
Good evening and welcome everybody. I'm Ron Dorn. I'm a radiation oncologist at St. Luke's Mountain States Tumor Institute in Boise. Been there for 30 years. It was my privilege to be with Laura and her wonderful team of breast cancer survivors on the Aconcagua climb and at the start of Expedition Inspiration in this symposium. So this is my 17th, as Marc just said, something unique this year, but it's wonderful to be back and see all of you here this evening.
My name is Michael Press, and I'm a pathologist at the University of Southern California. I'm also one of the 2 leaders of our Women's Cancers program at the Norris Cancer Center there. My interests have been really on the cancer cells and molecular alterations in those cells, especially in breast and gynecologic cancers. I'm also a member of the Medical Advisory Board for Expedition Inspiration. Returning to our research interests in in molecular markers, among the markers that my laboratory has investigated is the human epidermal growth factor receptor type 2, which is occasionally amplified or increased in copy number. And this is a gene we've been involved in for now almost 24 years since our first publication. And my lab was involved in 2 studies that led to FDA approvals for testing methods in fluorescence in situ hybridization to determine when this gene is altered. There's a targeted therapy directed against this alteration known as Herceptin. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and participate in the symposium.
I'm Drea Lashry, and I'm at the University of Miami. And my lab does research focusing on mechanisms of estrogen receptor negative breast cancer. And in so doing, we found a particular signaling pathway that results in estrogen receptor negativity. But along with doing that, it also regulates a set of small RNAs that we call microRNAs that regulate many different proteins. And this particular set that it regulates seems to have an expression pattern of which some of them come from the tumor cells themselves, but some of them come from the associated stroma and around the tumor. And the important role that the 2 in context with each other play in regulating this series of microRNAs and what this does to the biology of ER-negative breast cancer is what we focus on. And likewise, I'm thankful to be here, and thank you for coming.
Thank you also. My name is Cliff Hudis, and I am the chief of the Breast Cancer Medicine Service at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City. I'm also a professor of medicine at Weill Cornell Medical College, a point I'm making for a purpose. I also co-chair the breast committee of one of the cooperative groups, the Alliance, which is one of the federally funded cooperative groups that does clinical trials in breast cancer. The area of research that's really become my primary focus for the past decade involves the basic problem of inflammation and cancer, which Mark somewhat alluded to. And very specifically, we are focusing on translating some important laboratory observations regarding the development of a subclinical chronic inflammation into actionable steps that we could take in patients. The particular focus has been on obesity, which causes low-grade inflammation, but there clearly will be more. Now, what I didn't say at the outset, but is important to emphasize, is that I am about a third, maybe, of a really important collaboration, I'd say, really begun by my colleague on the other wing here, Andy Dannenberg. It was his discovery in the preclinical models that our team has taken forward into the clinic, making the point that it takes a village. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you today.
Hello, my name is Andy Min. I'm a physician scientist from the University of Pennsylvania. It's really nice to be here today. As a physician, I'm a radiation oncologist, but I spend most of my time in my research laboratory. We primarily study breast cancer metastasis, or why it spreads from the primary site to other organs, and its resistance to treatment. We're particularly interested in gene programs, groups of genes that control each of these events, and also the signaling pathways that may in turn turn on these genes. Last several years, we've become very interested in genes and signaling pathways that are normally associated with the immune system, because we find that these genes and signaling pathways are oftentimes altered in breast cancer, and we feel, and others also feel, that these may be very important in driving metastasis and its resistance to treatment.
I'm David Spiegel from Stanford University School of Medicine. I'm the group's psychiatrist, and I'm actually a psycho-oncologist. I will be talking a bit more later about my research with women in support groups, women with advanced breast cancer.
I'm Angie DiMichele. I'm a medical oncologist at the University of Pennsylvania, and I also have the privilege of being the chair of the Medical Advisory Board here for Expedition Inspiration, so it's nice to see so many familiar faces out there. Back at Penn, I co-lead our breast cancer program, and My research has focused on developing new drugs to treat the disease, looking for markers to understand which patients will best respond to those drugs, and studying the side effects of the drugs that we give women to try to understand who's at risk and how we can intervene. One of the drugs that we're now studying, actually relevant to the topic of the conference this year, is a drug that interferes with a pathway that is actually turned on by inflammation in the body. So an inflammatory cytokine IL-6 is something we've been studying for quite some time, and we have just started within the past year now a clinical trial of a drug called a JAK2 inhibitor that's designed to actually interfere with the way that inflammatory cytokine turns breast cancer cells on. So more to come on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I've already said hi, Julie Graylow. My research is clinical trials and the connection between breast cancer and the bone. Bone is the most common first site of distant recurrence. And I wanted to say, I'm not up here doing my email, I'm following the Twitter feed. The hashtag is EI Open Forum, and for those of you in Boise, that's how you're going to ask us questions during the question and answer session, is you're going to need to tweet in to the hashtag EI Open Forum, and I'll be monitoring that.
Hi, my name is Nora Desis. I'm a professor at the University of Washington. I'm a medical oncologist, and I work in a lab that's been studying breast cancer immunology for the last 20 years. We try to identify immunogenic proteins in breast cancer, figure out how people's lymphocytes recognize those proteins, and then try to figure out ways to harness the immune system to be able to fight breast cancer in terms of vaccines and cellular therapies to induce tumor regression.
Hi, my name is Amy Clark. I'm an instructor in medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. I am a breast medical oncologist, and my main area of research interest is clinical trials and drug development. And actually, I'm one of the Expedition Inspiration Award winners. And I'd just like to talk a little bit about my research that won the award.
You'll do it in a minute. We're going to call you up here to do it.
I'm sorry. You'll hear that in a minute.
You'll get your chance, we promise.
Good evening, my name is Catherine Drews. I'm the other young investigator awardee. I'll also be talking a little bit more about what I'm doing right now, but over the past years, I've been mainly studying ER-negative breast cancer and preclinical models, so we have better models to understand its biology. We can hopefully get stronger candidates to eventually get to therapeutics or prognostic factors. So I'll also be up in a minute. Thank you.
My name is Andy Dannenberg, and in distinction to those who just addressed you, I'm an example of an old investigator. In addition to that point of distinction, I'm professor of medicine at Weill Cornell Medical College. I am a gastroenterologist by training. My laboratory has been working on the connection between inflammation and cancer for roughly 2 decades. And for those of you who are unaware of this, chronic inflammation of many tissues, colitis, chronic gastritis, reflux esophagitis, chronic hepatitis, infectious diseases which cause chronic inflammation, all increase the risk of cancer. Roughly 20% of the world's cancers can be attributed, in fact, to chronic inflammation. 2 years ago, we reported for the first time that chronic inflammation can exist in the human breast. And it's primarily caused by being overweight or obese. So the focus of the collaborative science, the team science that I do with Dr. Hudis relates to trying to better understand the link, the pathogenesis for obesity-induced inflammation in the breast, to try to develop tests to non-invasively figure out who has it, because not everybody who's overweight or obese has this problem, and to develop approaches to reverse this inflammatory process with the hope that we can then decrease the breast cancer burden.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kim Lyerly, and I'm a surgical oncologist from Duke University. I've been the director of the Cancer Center at Duke for about 8 years, until about 1.5 years ago, where we focused most of our effort in looking at the the international and global impact of breast cancer and cancers in general. Many people may not realize that the burden of cancer in the world actually falls in Asia. There are many more people who die of cancer in Asia than anywhere else in the world, just because the population is so large. There are more people over the age of 65 in China than there are in the United States. There are about 60 million people over the age of 65 in India, and there's an explosion in the rate of breast cancer. What's shocking in these parts of the world is that if you find 100 cases of breast cancer in a city in Beijing, you'll probably have 100 deaths from breast cancer in that year, whereas, as you know, with screening and early detection, effective management, the death rate from breast cancer has remarkably dropped, and there's a very high chance of survival for early stage detection and treatment. My research lab has been focusing on developing new therapies and immunotherapies and a preventative vaccine for breast cancer, and I think what we're hearing now is that there are opportunities to imagine preventing vaccines. The cervical cancer vaccine was developed in the last few years, and there's a hope that in our lifetime we'll see an eradication of the biggest killer of women in the world from cancer, which is cervical cancer. So I think we are in the midst of sea change, and there's amazing opportunities ahead, and I want to thank all of you for your vision, the high altitude that you've kept, and maintaining the hope and the spirit of Laura Evans.
Hi, I'm Alberto Montero. I'm a medical oncologist at the University of Miami. I'm a clinical investigator. I have an interest in immune-based therapies. I have a particular interest, though, in developing new trials targeting a new strategy that's been recognized fairly recently, where the cancer cell encourages cells from the bone marrow to go to the tumor, and it suppresses T cells and also can enhance the process of metastases. So I collaborate with basic scientists at my institution and others to try to bring some of these promising compounds into the clinic to test it as a potential therapeutic target.
I'm Paul Montgomery. I'm a medical oncologist in Boise. I know a lot of you. The years that I've been involved with Expedition Inspiration go way back when I first met Laura Evans, when she tried to raise the profile of breast cancer education and screening at the state level in Boise during the legislative sessions back in the early 90s. And more recently, starting in the mid-2000s when I joined EI more closely, and then one of my patients, Brenda Williams, who is a gynecologist in Boise, decided to become very involved, and she ended up establishing one of the Young Investigator Awards, which you see tonight. My clinical interests in research go way back. We've put a lot of patients on protocols that really came from the ideas that were involved in the labs of the people that you see here tonight. We have a lot of these protocols that we'll be doing. We continue to escalate that, and I really want to show you that by what these individuals do, science is able to move quickly, and it happens because of all of your interest in making sure that science moves in the treatment of cancer and the improvement in human health.
So my name is Peter Kaufman. I'm an associate professor of medicine at Dartmouth Hitchcock and Dartmouth Medical School in Hanover, New Hampshire. So I had not quite the longest trip, but one of the longer trips to get here. I also serve on the medical advisory board. I'd actually like to, like everybody else, thank everybody who's here in the audience for all of the support you've provided for Expedition Inspiration over the years, which has just been fabulous and led to a lot of amazing work and outcomes from this group. So I'm an oncologist that specializes in breast cancer as well. My research interests are in novel therapies, novel chemotherapeutic agents, targeted therapies, what we now sort of call biologic therapies, which are therapies that more specifically attempt to target the cancer. One of the perhaps early examples of that is a medication that Dr. Press mentioned earlier called Herceptin, which is very active in a particular subtype of breast cancer. and I also serve on the Alliance Committee under Dr. Hudis that he mentioned earlier, which is one of the national funded cooperative groups focused on breast cancer.
Hello, my name is Michael Kern. I'm a surgeon from Galway in the west of Ireland. I'm professor of surgery and head of surgery in the university there. And I'm deeply appreciative of the invite to be here. I have a big interest in the individualization of breast cancer treatment. And to that end, we try to retain a small amount of tumor and blood from everybody with breast cancer who comes through the program. And that has enabled us to do several significant research projects on it. To mention a few, one that's particularly relevant to this meeting is the inflammation in the stroma, which is the area that surrounds the breast cancer, and the effect that has in the potentiation and development of breast cancer. We've also an involvement in microRNAs, which are tiny little fragments of genetic information that can control gene expression, and we've been able to identify them in the blood of breast cancer patients, and hopefully we'll be able to utilize that in management of cancers as we go on. Another study that we've done is we've taken blood from 1,000 women who've lived old and not got breast cancer and compared their genetics to those who've got breast cancer, and we've identified some novel new genes that may have a role in that space. Last thing I'd like to say is that it's an amazing opportunity for us as investigators to be able to have a discussion like this. It's very innovative, and it is amazing credit to you guys as fundraisers and philanthropists to provide this opportunity, which I think will have a global impact in breast cancer management. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Peter Lee. I'm a professor of medicine at City of Hope in California. I'm very happy to be here. And this is my first time in Sun Valley. What a beautiful place you live in. So I really am delighted to be here as well as be part of this distinguished panel. So I've been interested in how cancer affects the immune system of patients for the last 18 years, and specifically on breast cancer the last 8 years. And what we and others have found is that the immune system naturally has the capacity to respond to breast cancer. And in fact, some patients already make a partially effective immune response that allows them to have better clinical outcomes. But cancer cells are very tricky, and they do a lot of things to fool and suppress the immune system. And so what our work has done is try to really understand those mechanisms, and our hope is to develop treatments to restore and ultimately enhance immune function in patients.
Great, thank you. Angie, do you want to?